there was a lot of risk involved in bringing a wine to market. Everyone was trying to anticipate or emulate or differentiate against competitors and try to understand consumer demand. And there wasn't really a data-driven approach to do that other than to look at the past. Oh, I can fix all this by objectifying it as a scientist, and the answer has to be in the chemistry.
Now let's go to the difficult part, because we break the belief the tasters, because they have absolutely no science behind.
So we had those three things: the food and flavor preference, the consumer panels, and the chemistry of the wines. And then we used our machine learning algorithms to understand what are the relationships and interdependencies between these three data sets so that we can simulate what products those different consumers would like that they have not tried before.
We just validate it by taking the wine into competitions. And the same people over taste the wine, but they have the same way to think about wine. I think you probably disrupted the narrow mindset of the wine industry.
You have wines that all kind of like look and taste the same, and they're addressing the same 20% of consumers. And because everyone's copycatting, there's like 80% of consumers that don't have an opportunity to find a wine that they're going to like.
How did you actually teach computer how to taste it? Thank you so much, Katerina, to accepting my invite to come to the Vinovisionaries. And Katerina actually makes something very different that we never heard about her. It's completely different than what everyone doing in the wine industry. And I'm so happy here for you be able to share the thing you discover and created. It's actually helping so much the wine industry. So, Katerina, my first question for you, we wanted to all know what's about who you are and why what's the problem you saw there in the wine industry. You feel like you started to ask yourself why people doing that way, if you could change the way to do things and get a better solutions and sell better, marketing better the wine. So maybe just to try to go back to the beginning where you didn't even have the Tastry yet. It was just the academic research, and how that became in business. So let's just see to connect a little bit this story behind of Tastry.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So the origin story, right, the real story, where it's not like, oh, I knew exactly how this is going to turn out and what was going to happen, and this was the vision all along kind of story. The real background is I had a fresh perspective on the wine industry because I was a young college student, and I worked in the wine industry while in school, doing various jobs and ultimately ending up in the lab and in production. And I was an aspiring scientist and was reading research papers in my free time, but also I would work a lot of shifts, especially during harvest. But I got to see, I think, all facets of the wine business, from sales to marketing to product development. And what was interesting to me was that there was a lot of risk involved in bringing a wine to market. So that was the inspiration. And the risk is the fact that you have to use a lot of intuition on millions of dollars of an inconsistent agricultural product. So what would happen is I would see sales and marketing looking at Nielsen data, for example, and saying things like, oh, these top brands, had these fruity plum characteristics in them. So we need to make our wine like this. And they would tell production that these were the goals. And then there was a lot of friction because production would say, okay, I'll see what I can do. Right. And so everyone was trying to anticipate or emulate or differentiate against competitors and try to understand consumer demand. And there wasn't really a data-driven approach to do that other than to look at the past. So my, ambitious vision as a really young college student was, oh, I can fix all this by objectifying it as a scientist, and the answer has to be in the chemistry. And that's like a elegant way of saying it. What really happened was is I was just reading research papers in my free time, trying to understand what research existed, whether it was from UC Davis or Cornell, or from the largest flavor and fragrance houses of the world. How are they understanding how consumers perceive flavor so that we can predict it? And it turns out that there's a lot of money being spent on focus groups to answer this very question. And the focus groups are inherently unreliable. And even when they are reliable, they're focused on the wrong things. So again, my perspective at the time, but it turned out to be true. All the research that is tied to answering this question is tied to trying to predict what words do we use to describe the product. So does benzaldehyde or the polyphenols or whatever it may be in this wine make consumers describe it as cherry, for example? The problem with this notion or this approach is that there's a flavor matrix in a sensory-based product, and machines do not experience chemistry like humans. So we do not look at one compound at a time. We look at all the compounds in their respective natural ratios together as a complex chemical soup. So the presence or absence of a compound is very bad at predicting what flavors you perceive. And it's also irrelevant because what flavors you say you perceive do not predict if you actually like the wine. So that's where the inspiration came.
So it's very interesting because I have the same talking all the time in my social media. Is exactly that. I think it's very, and for me, it's my experience studying wine. And I had, because my English is not my first language, and I tried to study one of these famous wine courses from London. And like while studying that, and they have this many flavors that had no meaning for me because I'm from Brazil. We don't have elderflower, we don't have a butterscotch, and to be honest, I thought butterscotch was a butter from Scotland for so long time, for so long. And then because that's what we put in the Google Translate, and the Google Translate that they say like it's a butter from Scotland. And I researched so much in the Google why the butter from Scotland is tasty different from the butter from Australia or Brazil. And it was so confusing for me for so long. And I never tasted and smell those flavors. And like most of the flavors, I would say I never had contact. I was just repeating what I have learned, and it became just a cycle. And we just keeping telling ourselves is that, and you just keeping telling things, but sometimes you don't even feel the perception, because I didn't know. They told me I need to use the words, I use the words, but I was not familiar with those words because it's not part of my culture. That's where it was from. So it's funny because you say that, because even for me, work as sommelier as a wine professional, and it describing wines with that tastes, it's most of it then I didn't even feel or smell or taste it. It was just the words. And I guess it's so hard because everyone have a perceptions different, because if you have a different background, it's very difficult. You say strawberries for a country they don't have strawberries. Make sense? How we can make that description so everyone can understand. If so you never see or smell or eat strawberries.
Exactly. That's
how they taste it.
Yeah, we even when we agree on the same experience, which we don't, because we have the unique biology, like we're saying, we don't have the same nurture or cultural background to acknowledge it. So, well, like the cherry example, benzaldehyde, right? In Europe, people will describe the same wine with benzaldehyde, not like cherry, but with like marzipan. And in America, they don't do that. I totally agree with that perception. A language is not as complex, I think, as what we're experiencing in wine. Maybe one way to look at it too, but total in agreement. So that's why, it was puzzling to me how these variables, these latent variables, were not being taken into account when trying to understand consumers.
So, and then now let's go to the difficult part, because we break the belief the tastes, because we have been believing that for so long. This is very outdated because they having absolutely no science behind. Like you have a like how we perceive the wine. Like you can perceive cherry, you can perceive plum, you can perceive lemon, lime. We all perceive like it's all natural different. So, but we try to everyone have the same language, but it's been very hard to do that because we have all different experiences in different countries, have different fruits, different flowers, different things. And then you already understand that at the beginning. It's awesome because that's many people keeping doing the same thing without asking themselves why. And then now what's this? Now we actually bring the chemistry and to understand the palate. So how did you put these two words together to be able to building that's because the human perception, the chemistry, how things is working together to be able to create the Tastry. How was the things behind it of the product? So what did you bring in?
Well, first,
I know it's going to be complicated, but if you can make it easier for everyone to understand, just remember we are not on the tech industry.
No, it's really obvious and intuitive when you point it out, but even though we can actually see how in our data how consumers of different experience levels will describe certain compounds as flavors, our whole premise was that is not relevant. So we bypassed our effort in understanding how words are used to communicate flavors, and we focused on research that was very much missing, which was likability. So the first thing we had to have, which is very predictable, actually, it's very predictable when you look at the chemistry to understand what is the threshold of these various compounds and combinations of compounds that make a wine acceptable or not acceptable to an individual or group of consumers? And what is the threshold where they like it enough to want to buy it again? That's very predictable, and there isn't a lot of disagreement on that when you conduct the research in this way. And that's the most predictable component to whether or not you're going to have a successful product in the market you're targeting. So the first thing we did before we even had this business model or this approach was we actually have a unique analytical chemistry methodology. We didn't invent any equipment, but we invented a method to grab all the analytes in, say, a sample of wine at one pass in a machine as opposed to running panels. So we grab the chemistry as much as possible, and then we use machine learning to interpret the relationships in that chemistry. That's kind of how this was made possible. And we are, third-party certified lab. We just don't expose, so you can compare our results against other labs, and they're actually more accurate and reproducible. We just don't expose the method that we use. But with this method, we were able to analyze thousands and thousands of wines in a variety of chemistry. And then over the years, and after spending a lot of money, we poured the wines we had this chemistry for to consumers of various experience levels. So we had sommeliers, we had 21-year-olds, who were still in college. We had moderate drinkers, winemakers, everyone. And then we had them tell us what foods and flavors they prefer that are not related to wine, so that we can understand, the cultural influence and background that is connected to their taste. Whether it's, it could be genetic as well or not, it doesn't matter as long as I understand, do you like bell peppers or not? It helps me understand how that preference translates to wine. So we had those three things: the food and flavor preference, the consumer panels, and the chemistry of the wines. And then we used our machine learning algorithms to understand what are the relationships and interdependencies between these three data sets, so that we can simulate what products those different consumers would like that they have not tried before. Some people have mentioned, just really quick, that this was kind of a kickoff from Hamari's research. And there's a distinction there in that it's very much not a one-on-one relationship, which is, I think, how a lot of recommenders have failed in the past. And what I mean by that is I'm using AI, and I cannot say, if you tell me you hate bell peppers, that my recommender is not going to include wines without pyrazines in it. All I can tell you is that I know that the combinations of the hundreds of other compounds have to exist in a certain ratios for pyrazine to be acceptable to you.
Wow.
Does that kind of make sense? That's as simply, I apologize, as I can explain it. But
Yeah,
that's
it was pretty clear. Don't worry, it was pretty clear. I really like it that the how you do the research, because it was not just about the wine. You just understand the culture of the person, like what they eat, what they like it, to be able to come in your conclusion. So I think that's making more stronger position to find a way to predict it. And then I do love it, the thing you said, it's not necessary because you have a plum or a strawberries or cherry in your wine, people's gonna like the wine, because it's much more than just the fruit perception. That is a lot of the compounds, chemistry compounds behind. And I fully agree, because working the face-to-face consumers, I never had ones come to the store and they say like, I want a wine and tasty cherry. They never come and looking for that. They're not on the mind. They try to find that specific flavor, because that flavor is so hard to find anyway. It's not like when you buy a whiskey, when they actually put it, it up, they put a caramel in the wine, you can actually taste it fully caramel. It's very, very fine. You really need to looking for that specific flavor to be able to find it, if you find it. It's not for everyone. So it's a very difficult way to communicate a wine. And then I agree with you, because I do have the experience on consumers, and consumers don't understand. We just became the make wine so complex, and what I love it, you just make things much easier to understand for everyone. And exactly that, the people, they answer when they taste the wine is that I like it, I don't like it, I like it, I don't like it. That's exactly what the most consumers answers, like the average consumers answer when you're doing wine tasting, is that, oh, I like this wine, oh, I don't like this wine. So it's connected, what you say to me, and with my experience in face-to-face consumers for the last 13 years. So it is pretty much how consumers perceive the wine. I like it or I don't like it. So I really enjoy that conversation, because it makes a lot of sense for me working the consumer side. And there is a misconception like about we have a chat before these things, and we're talking a little bit about the misconception you just mentioned to me. So people think, say, all wine's going to taste the same, then if you have that research. But how we can prove Tastry can bring that diversity with a different personalized palette for the wine, and don't taste the same.
Yeah, it's actually, it's really, really interesting. That's the number one question or concern we used to get when we started, and it's actually the opposite of that. Just, it seems like humans are blaming AI for what they've been doing already for the past many, many decades. In fact, it seems like, at least in the US, the wine industry has sort of this copycat syndrome, kind of like similar to the story I mentioned, what I observed was going on in the industry before I was even in the industry, where you have buyers, national buyers, telling brands that they want a Mayomi lookalike or a cupcake lookalike, or make me a wine like this. And so we see, actually, it's in the data. Like, I could see it in the data on grocery store shelves. You have wines that all kind of like look and taste the same, and they're addressing the same 20% of consumers. And because everyone's copycatting, there's like 80% of consumers that don't have an opportunity to find a wine that they're going to like on the shelf, because everyone's just hitting the same target over and over again from a flavor perspective. That's been going on long before Tastry entered the picture, and it has been a really big fight for us to show the industry a better way, and to give them confidence, I guess, that there's an opportunity to lean into, the uniqueness of your terroir or the uniqueness of your wine, and that to show there's a market for it. And actually, you can be much better than the competitor you're targeting if you lean into these characteristics of the wine that the market is missing. So it's possible because I can see consumer preferences, right, on a zip code national level, and I can see the wine chemistries that exist and where they're successful and not successful. That's what the Tastry platform does, which means I can see what chemistries should exist that do not exist, and what would happen if they did exist in the market that you're trying to go after. So you can kind of imagine it as a simulation type matchmaker, where we're showing you how to differentiate. So if anything, I think that we've been successful on some level now in steering customers away from making wines taste the same.
Yeah, because I guess one of the things I think about it, we try to do the same because we wanted to have it all disapproved or validated. The all wine is going to be doing better on the market. But we don't really try to ask consumers. We just validate it by taking the wine into, it's like competitions. And the same people over taste the wine, but they have the same way to think about wine. I think you probably disrupted the narrow mindset of the wine industry, I guess, because we believe the wine should be exactly this way. And then the whole compounds around us to validate that it's all about us, how we taste, how we like it. But we never take it along the consumers. And it probably, like you said, and if you just see 1/3, it's just 30% of the whole American drink wine, and then 70% is not at the moment. It's probably because there is not product then like it. That's make a lot of sense, because we just see, we probably just want to validate or just to have the wine already validated, and that's we end up in this group think on this traditional around, and you keep and produce pretty lots of similar products and then not innovate the industry. So the Tastry, it's given the opportunity to actually bring products with can be differentiating the market. That's what I understand, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think there's a similar value proposition depending on the size of the production. It just changes the way you go about it, right? So the large productions, they have the volume, the distribution, the relationships, and they have a lot of leeway on how they could manipulate the wine to maintain consistency year over year and target the same consumers and things like that. But the distinctiveness of the wine isn't there. There's always a trade-off between distinctiveness and popularity, right? So the more people like a wine, we see the less they like it overall. And the smaller group of people like a wine, the more likable the wine is. So there's a lot of opportunities in between, and it makes sense for a large production to maximize capturing consumers who are going to like the wine because they have the production to do it. It might not be anyone's favorite wine, but that makes sense from a business perspective. However, the problem comes in when you have other brands who are maybe smaller or mid-sized productions who are trying to replicate that brand, and they don't have the volume or distribution to back it up, and they never wanted to. So what they're doing is when they're trying to make a copycat, they're trading the uniqueness and distinctiveness of their wine that's going to make it more competitive for their case production,
Oh
because they
yeah.
see something that's popular because of marketing and logistics, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different, and it's kind of looking at like, okay, like how much do you really want to optimize this? Because if you're not a top 5 winery or whatever, you can be way more competitive than them trying to do something different and very good at doing that, right? So it just depends on what you're trying to do. And if you're very, very small, 10,000 case winery, you probably don't need any help making a distinctive wine. You have variation in the vineyard, year over year, and it's part of the story you tell. Your challenge isn't going to be optimizing the winemaking. Your challenge is going to be, how do I find the needle in the haystack and the consumers that are going to love my wine and pay the most for it? And so that's how we help them. So very, very different what people's goals are in the industry.
Yeah, it's a very this is a great way to do it, by the way, because
Yeah.
you try to fight consumers for them, like what's you give the profile what they most likely to like it. When I talk with Alex, he said something to me. I don't remember the numbers. That's why I want to ask you. People most of the time they go into shoppings like bottle shops, and then most likely to buy a bottle without, like he's like a percentage, like they buy a bottle, they don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's someone there to help it, I think it was 67%, it's more likely they like it. And then with Tastry, it was 90 something percent, like the chance they actually like it. There is a research about that. Like,
Yeah.
that's true.
So on an individual level, if we don't have any data on you, prior data on you as an individual consumer, the accuracy is about 80%. On an aggregate level, like if I combine the palates of hundreds of thousands of people in a city and run simulations on that, the accuracy has been pretty consistent at 93%,
Wow.
92.8% over the past 4 years. And I don't see, I think that's we've kind of like capped out on that. So yeah, it is definitely more accurate than other methods that we have seen out there, especially if you don't have any data on the consumer.
Wow, that's massive. That's very massive. It's a like 93%, it's pretty good. And how did you actually teach computer how to taste it? Because that's pretty much the message. I have a listen for other podcasters are listening for you, and then for how things like that's exactly what you teach, right? So that's Tastry is about it. So you make the computer how to taste it. So that's how they explain to how consumers and chemistry how they want. Because how was the process to get that?
Well, I just provided the chemistry part of the invention, and it was very much about building a bridge between how analytical objective chemistry equipment looks at chemistry and how do you translate that to how humans actually perceive chemistry. And that's very much part of our secret sauce. But you have to know what's in the bottle. I think just like a sommelier or a consumer even has to know what's in the bottle and experience what's in the bottle to know if they like it, so do we. The other metadata is not as predictive. So I'll put it that way. So one is the chemistry, and then the other piece of this is the reason we used machine learning to teach a computer how to taste is to scale our understanding of consumer preferences, because there's only like 2 companies in the world who would be able to afford to run time-consuming multi-million-dollar tasting panels on wines before they go to market to have an understanding on what consumers want. And they need to be massive tasting panels, because we have seen if the sample size is too small, they're unreliable, it's not representative of the population. So when we say we teach a computer how to taste, what we're really saying is we are providing one big giant virtual focus group, and we're giving this to you as a tool in lieu of running consumer panels, and we can get you results and communicate things to you that consumers would not be able to communicate to you on how to reach the objective as a business. So maybe we should really say that we're just one big giant virtual focus group instead, because depending on if you're a winemaker or if you're a business owner or if you're in sales and marketing, you're going to be using data to anticipate consumer demand. You're just going to be using it in different ways. So consumer preference is tied to all of that. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it's just we wanted to all understand what's the process and how we were actually putting things together. And then so now what's the biggest challenge now for you in the wine industry? So like you now we solve a problem, like a bigger problem, so you can actually predict what's the wine like the consumers are gonna like it, and people can be able to target their communications, market sales for that specific public, and then we can be able to find more innovative ways to make wines in the shelves, and it doesn't look like it all the same, you hit the same 20%. So you may see more people bring new things and have more consumers enjoy us for tasty wines, because we try to do lots of things, and the wine is in different package, and the wine is in different shapes and different things, but we have absolutely no production, or we have no data before we put the wines in the shelves. So you wanted to do exactly to give that less risk for people before they spend so much money to be able to put in the wines in the shelves. So I think that's magnific. This is amazing, because it's a problem we have been for decades now. It's not even like decades we have been running the business in the same way.
Yeah.
But now, what is the challenge for you will find in the wine industry? Because I clearly understand your mission, and I clearly understand what you try to do, and I value it so much. But what is the biggest challenge for you at the moment?
Well, that I thought when I started this that the challenge would be building the technology, right? It's complicated, but the technology wasn't the difficult part at all. The challenge has been and continues to be the people. I think it it takes a long time for people to get comfortable with new ideas and new concepts, especially in a space that is as traditional and insular as the wine industry. So people do not move or adapt as fast as technology can. So it's really been about how do I bridge that gap and integrate into the existing workflow of organizations and demonstrate value. I used to get the joke a lot, you have a software for winemakers in winemaking, are you replacing our job? And it takes a couple of times to show them what it looks like, tell them that this was designed and built by winemakers, and help them see that it's another tool. So it's really perception. I mean, I heard someone say like the other day that AI was junk science, and that AI can never make AI or chemistry can never make recommendations, and because there's so many other variables that go into recommending a wine. But then I think, okay, but that means humans can't recommend wine as either, based on your logic. And I can show you, come on, like, let me show you, I'll demonstrate to you that the answer really is in the chemistry. So it's conversations like that. Like, we had to run a test with 15 Swiss sommeliers where they took our Tastry quiz, tasted the wines and we showed them what we predicted how they would rank order the wines, and it matched exactly with how they rank ordered the wines, so they would believe us. And I had to say, not only that, I had to say there was a 1 in 9 million chance that we would have been able to do that. So it's a lot of like really aggressive, like showcasing what you can do to show that it works, because there's skepticism. And then the other side of it is there's a lot of like gentle, like, here this is not a threat, like this is beneficial, this saves entire productions, kind of thing. So evangelizing is the biggest challenge there.
I guess it's a very good point you touch. It's just because the wine industry have this it's very hard for the wine industry to accept anything outside of what they have been done before, and the traditional mindset. It's really one challenge for you to go through. Like, I can get that because I know. And then I think the other thing as well on the wine industry, can we try to break that bridge? It's like to actually build that bridge, not break, build that bridge. It's because the wine industry don't understand it. Tech AI, we never been exposure to these concepts, and and they're all every day. We don't have that talks around. We don't watching things about AI or tech or something. We because you don't know, it became harder for us to understand the whole concept. I can get that. That's why I think you find challenge. It's about people, because that people is really the people in the wine industry. We have this not much knowledge about what's going on in AI. AI is just getting better and better and better and better every year, and it's just gonna be better and better and better and better in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. It's just gonna improve, but we don't understand at all, and that's probably why. That's one of the reasons I create this, is just to be able to build that bridge and to be able to explain that tech and AI is here to help, is not here to be enemies. Because I think that's the way we interpret it. We think AI and tech is its enemies, and then they are not. They just be coming with the superpower to make us even stronger, to make all jobs even better, and to make the wine industry progress and then go to the next stage. So I really congratulations, and hopefully by step we can get there, and we can actually build that bridge where AI and tech is very welcome to the wine industry. But the other questions I want to take to you is so how, like, I would like you to just give you for us 3 advices for the wine industry, how we could start to understand AI, how we could try to understand tech. Because just remember, we are a very on the beginning, we are very traditional. We need to go step by step. What's the way we'll be able to understand these things better, to understand that this is actually come to us to help us. So 3 advices for us to see the tech and AI in a different perspective, because I think we need to change the perspective of how we see tech and AI in the wine industry. So I'd like you to give 3 advices for us, how we could start it, to be able to understand and start to just believe there is another perspective there. We can just research about it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. The first thing that's coming to mind is don't be intimidated by technology. It's kind of like how you see consumers that get intimidated by all the fancy words sommeliers use to describe a wine. I think that's similar to how the wine industry sees technology. It's like technology is the sommelier for the wine industry, and it's just a bunch of fancy words and a bunch of fancy lingo that, when you really look at it, explains a lot of really simple concepts. So it's, there's not there's not a lot of overwhelming concepts behind the lingo, I would say. So there's no reason to be afraid by that. The simplest like how the algorithms work or what the capabilities are, anyone can understand them if you just ignore the fanciful language. So that's one thing I learned, right? I didn't have a background in AI or software or anything like that. I was just not afraid to look stupid for a very long time. And then I realized, oh, this is actually not a big deal. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I would say, like, ignore like the bells and whistles, you know what I mean, and like the grand claims and all the, again, fanciful stuff. I just focus on, how is this going to actually solve a problem for me? What's keeping me up at night? And is there something that could help me find a solution, right, to an emergency? My crop is smoke tainted. How do I figure out the recipe before, the 48 hours are up and I have to drop the fruit? Or I'm going to lose placement on the shelf. What data do I need to show the buyer that this is a huge mistake, right? Like, put it in the context of what actually matters to you. Not, just looking at the technology face value. So those are the two things I can think of. You asked for three, but I have to think of a third one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just still like a way to us to just to be able to think different. It's just like how we can break in that perception, that perspective, that barrier where we people just start to talk about AI or about tech. We just automatically we press the button on our head and say like, I don't believe it. And you can show research and things like, this is the right thing, this is what it that's what it show, that's a lot of the research behind this, is have a science behind, and the people still say on the head it's not true, it's not possible. And that's why the question is just because we needed to just creating that is curiosity to people just to go ahead and then try to find different ways to learn a little bit more about it before they say like that's just not possible straight away. I think that's the message I wanted to give you here. Is it's always is possible. We're living in a very changing world in different aspects. It's not just the wine industry. And there are ways I think we can be more productive. It's just spark curiosity in yourselves.
Well, I would also say, I think having skepticism when someone makes outrageous grand claims about things is completely natural and completely encouraged. Like, I think it is totally fair when someone tells you, hey, I can make you a blend that these consumers in Texas are going to love, and it's going to perform 20% better than your competitor. I think, yeah, you should probably look into and investigate and be skeptical about a claim like that. But, there are ways to demonstrate efficacy and evidence. But yeah, so totally would expect that from reasonable people, I would say.
Yeah. But I always try to research it and try to find
Yeah.
out if the answer is correct or not. I think that's before you say completely no, probably just try to find out more. So just before you say no. But one thing as well, I read in your website, it's very interesting because it's something is in Australia, we have very big problems with, in America as well, in Chile as well, in different parts of the world, is with the fires, with the smoke plant. And it's something like because you have these always studies in the chemistry and your machine is you understand all the chemistry behind it of the wine and they can break down in different ways. You actually can help in the smoke tank as well. So how you can do that? And for what I read as well, it's inexpensive to do with Tastry. They in different ways. So can you just explain the benefits and then what you do and the benefits, how it became inexpensive to do on your and then like a quick and inexpensive way with Tastry?
Yeah, I mean, the side effect of the chemistry methodology is it was just more efficient than running panels. We just have a faster, better, cheaper process to do that, so it's not very expensive for us to do, so we don't have to charge a lot for it. So, you get about $3,700 now. We keep adding more analytes of chemistry for a $370 sample of wine that you send to Tastry, as you would at any other lab, and it is also certified. So it is, accurate, reproducible, third-party certified chemistry. So $370 a sample is what our current pricing is for this year. And depending on how many samples you have or what you're trying to do, right, the number of samples changes. But a sample's a sample, whether it's a finished wine or a tank sample, or an already blended batch of wine. We just need to analyze the chemistry for it to give you answers. So a lot of the way we earn trust in the industry was by solving emergencies. And in California, we also had some pretty bad wildfire seasons, and it was a great way for us to kind of divert our business efforts, but also help the industry at the same time. And so what we do is we'll analyze a sample of your juice in the vineyard where you're concerned about smoke taint, and the AI is really good at predicting the outcomes of chemical interactions. So we would direct it to do the inputs we gave it were make this more appealing. And it already knows that the ratios of the guaiacol or 4-methyl guaiacol or the syringol or all the compounds associated with smoke taint, these ratios are not associated with an acceptable range. And we also have ingredients that it will run simulations to see what can I do to ameliorate this damage? What ingredients can I use? And what ingredients will be the least likely to sacrifice removing the other beneficial flavors in the wine with these treatments. So we saved a lot of productions that way. And it's really the same task to Tastry as making a wine or helping blend a wine or sell it to any given market. It's just a solve this problem, get from point A to point B task.
So you just try to diminish the flavors or the compounds on the smoky taint. Mm-hmm. I just want to make it easy. The smoky taint compounds, like keeping negative way to how customers perceive by putting another compounds for the blend. So that's how mask that compounds. So that's general right. Ideas like that. So we just mask it with the blend you want, and that compounds negative compounds. So we can just go away, just to make it.
Well, there's certain, right. I mean, there's certain, treatments you can do to the wine, but depending on the unique, every wine is a unique chemistry. Certain treatments will be more or less favorable, and traditionally you just have to go through a lot of iterations and hope you find the right one in the right time. This way, the AI goes through all possible iterations and gives you the ones that will be successful.
Wow, that's massive for the wine industry. I would say congratulations for the amazing idea, and for everything I have. I am contact with so many people doing different stuff with AI and tech in the wine industry, and definitely some of your projects you really show a lot of potential and a lot of solving lots of problems, and hopefully that challenges you have now, it's going to be just temporary, and hopefully we all be able to see and be able to welcome all of these innovators in the wine industry and in different ways. But I would say thank you so much for giving us timing for us to learning more how we can do better in the wine industry. I really appreciate your just giving you the time and the research and to come in with something completely new to the wine industry. I just want to say thank you so much for everything you do. And please just give us some contacts so people are interested to be in touch with you. Just a last question. So can you do that internationally? Because we have this podcast you're watching and in different countries, not only in US or Australia. So we have people from Europe, people from Brazil, people from South America, from different parts in the world. So what do you do? Can you do for everyone, or is limited at the moment?
No, we have clients internationally, mostly in Europe right now. I think it's just about, until I open up a lab in Europe or Australia or somewhere like that. Like you have to ship the sample to the lab. So that's really like the number one, limiting factor right now in us having the ability to efficiently break into those markets. But people do send samples internationally as well. So if we can get it, we can analyze it and offer solutions. We do have an understanding of palates in regions outside the U.S. That's a whole other discussion, probably podcast number 2, but that's the short answer. Yeah.
So yeah, so people can contact you from different countries to be able to you'll be able to help if they can deliver the samples. That's great. Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and yeah, definitely a big congratulations for what you do and for your mission in the wine industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great.